Hello, students. Welcome back to the BoSTEM STEM Chats. Today I have a special guest with us, Spencer Hommel. He is representing the Avanti Financial Group, and he's a recent graduate of Suffolk University, and he's had many other jobs in between. I'm so happy to welcome Spencer Hommel. Spencer, would you mind giving us just a background on yourself, how you came into liking finances, anything you want to tell us about your background, really?
Sure. So I think like a lot of people either watching this or on the call right now, I've always been interested in STEM since I was very young. I was always more on the math side of the classes than the English classes. I remember even from like a very early age, I wanted to be a video game designer of all things. So I always had some interest in computers. And this really sort of took off when I was in high school and I was taking computer science classes like some other people as well. And actually in 2014, I took an econ class by a random chance, and the professor told me about Bitcoin. And this was back in 2014 when Bitcoin was still relatively new. I think at that time it was maybe 5 years old. And it was just such a cool, such a cool technology, ever changing, and just something that just made sense to me. So I always had some interest in sort of this mix of, technology and finance, which is called fintech. So this kind of followed me throughout college, where I eventually interned at Fidelity Investments in their blockchain incubator. So for those who don't know, Fidelity Investments is one of the biggest 401k providers in the world. They have roughly $8 trillion assets under management, which is a very large sum of money. So there's this massive sort of financial conglomerate that is getting into Bitcoin and blockchain. And I was kind of on the precipice of that group. So I interned with them in the summer of 2018, going into my final year of school at Suffolk University. After my internship was up, I worked there part-time during my last year of school until I graduated in, I think it was May 2019, where I started full-time up until actually a couple months ago when I left for Avanti, which is essentially a startup out of Wyoming that is hoping to be the first Bitcoin bank. So once again, it kind of mixes this traditional finance world with this new technology sort of side of things.
Wonderful. Thank you, Spencer. I have so many questions already.
Please, I'd be happy to
I'll start with an easy one. What was your favorite math class in school? You mentioned that math was your favorite subject.
Oh, geez, that's a tough one. I can definitely say it wasn't multivariable calculus, but I think for me it was probably discrete mathematics. So this kind of gets into like set theory, number theory, some network analysis stuff. So this is a pretty common class that you'll see in most CS programs in math. I'm sorry, in college. But it's sort of just a different way of thinking about math. So traditional math is 2 + 2 = 4, right? But this sort of abstract way of thinking really kind of introduces you to a whole new way of looking at complex problems. And I can kind of give, and I can give more specific examples if there's any interest, but I think just at the surface level, I'll leave it there for now.
I appreciate you breaking that down. I feel like a lot of students are looking for math classes that'll get them to that next level. So even just having your insight on that is super helpful.
So going off that point, if people are looking for math classes to take, I would definitely recommend getting familiar with Calculus 1 and Calculus 2. I think those two are probably one of the most important math classes you can take as a STEM major.
Awesome, I totally agree, even though I did not do well in those classes.
Not a lot of people do.
But I wanted to follow up about your college experience because it's really unique. You graduated in 3 years, correct?
Yes. So I took a program in high school called IB, which is the International Baccalaureate. So it's very similar to AP, but it's just internationally recognized. So the idea is that if you go to school in the US and then you want to go to school abroad, usually you would have to take some classes in between your last year of high school and your first year of university to make up some credits. Basically, it's sort of this international program that's recognized. But long story short, I basically went into college with a full year of credits, which is very good. I'd recommend trying to get as many credits for college as possible. But I was actually a double major when I first went into college, both math and computer science. But I decided to drop my second major, which being math, in favor of graduating 1 year early.
How do you think, just to follow up on that, how do you think graduating early got you set up for success with such an amazing job at Fidelity?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I definitely think you're starting your career 1 year early, which actually makes a pretty big difference. I mean, you're still going to be the youngest on the team, probably by a large margin. But I think, especially going into high school, well, that's a good question, actually. I may have to think about that.
You can take as long as you need. Also, I can switch to a different question if it's impossible to answer.
No, I think just simply put, I think it just puts you 1 year ahead, which you're kind of 1 year ahead of your peers, right? Which is a pretty significant benefit, and you also save a year on college tuition and loans as well. So I think that also helps a lot.
Definitely, I agree. You ran a number of clubs in college and also, I assume, high school.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about how running a club might influence your ability to do STEM or
Sure.
Spark your interest? A lot of students that watch this run and are in clubs related to STEM, so it'd be really helpful to share your experience.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think just at a very high level, I think clubs are amazing. I'm a big proponent. I think in high school I started 3 or 4 clubs, and in college I was part of, a dozen or so. So I actually started what I call the first high school Bitcoin club back in 2014 when I first heard about Bitcoin. So it was me, my friend, and then our teacher that just met during lunch to to kind of talk about Bitcoin. And then that actually evolved into going to MIT to talk with some famous Bitcoin people as well. So just getting your foot in in the door as a high school student, of all things, is really good. But going to college, I think the biggest thing that it helps with is just being more confident about yourself. So one of the things that I did at Suffolk was I was the president of the computer science club, and our main goal was what we call professional development. So I ran a number of workshops on how to conduct yourself during interviews, both sort of outside of STEM and inside of STEM, so kind of technical interviews as well. We also did workshop prep, a whole bunch of stuff, networking prep. We sponsored people to get their own business cards as well, which was really cool. But I think the biggest thing we did was we would visit tech companies in Boston and the surrounding area as well, to sort of help our members, especially the upperclassmen, kind of get their foot in the door with internships. We actually had quite a few students that were part of our club throughout my 3 years that I was the president get internships through these through these connections we made at these seemingly random companies around Boston. So I think it's good for confidence, but also sort of getting your foot in the door early, so you can sort of build that connection with the person at that company you're talking to. And then when the time of graduation or internships come around, you at least have sort of an inside person there almost, or someone that knows you more than just your name. So.
Thank you so much. Students hear that. Make sure you join clubs. It'll exude your confidence.
And also on top of that, it's just fun, right?
It's just fun. Yeah.
It's the best when you can start your own too, if there's not the club that you're not interested in. But a lot of the times, especially when you're in college, there's a club pretty much for anything you can think of. Yeah, and it's also good to sort of work, or be around like-minded people as well that share similar interests as well. So you're joining a club probably for some particular reason, and if someone else is there for that particular reason as well, then you can sort of make connections that way, and you can even make friends. So it's great.
I agree
I did
totally. I
I
have
did
a
see.
question from the
Yeah,
chat.
I
Do you mind if I introduce it for you?
of course, yes, please.
Sorry about that. So Lewis asked, did you know you were going to do this work as a child?
Oh,
Or
gosh.
what's the first career you wanted to do in general?
Oh, so Lex is going to like this answer, and she knows it. But what I mean, so to answer that question, no, I had no idea what I was gonna do. When I was really young, I wanted to be a geologist of all things. I had like this really, really big sort of gem and mineral collection that I still have somewhere in my parents' house. But yeah, no, I had no idea that I was going to be working on. I mean, I think as I maybe got into middle school, I knew that I was going to do something with computer science or something in the sort of the STEM field for sure. But I mean, if you go back even 5 years, not even when I was young, but even when I was in high school and told me that I was going to be working on Bitcoin, I would have not believed you. So, and I think that's an important thing to reiterate, that you don't need to know what you're doing from a young age or even in college. I think it's a very natural thing to sort of choose a career path early, and it's perfectly normal to stay on that career path, but it's also completely fine to transition, off that path at any time that you feel that, dissatisfied or unsure about it.
Thank you so much. That's great advice for all the students out there. I have one question involving Bitcoin because I just want to highlight you here. How many Bitcoin mining machines have you made? And also, like, what is your day-to-day life as far as Bitcoin? Like, what does your job entail?
Oh, so I've never made a real Bitcoin mining machine because those are quite expensive. I have set up part of Fidelity's mining operation, which I can get into a little bit, but yeah, so that's a really good question, and I'll try and keep it as high level as possible. So Bitcoin is a very complicated sort of conglomerate of code, and it's open source, right? So maybe I should introduce Bitcoin just a little bit. So at a very high level, Bitcoin is essentially an open source internet money that's virtual, right? So what does open source mean? Open source means, so usually when companies produce code or produce products, they usually keep their code what's called proprietary, which it means like secret. So they don't show the public their code. But there are sort of some open source code bases. A lot of them are on GitHub, which I'd recommend you checking out. But basically what I'm getting at is that the Bitcoin code is completely open source. So you can go on github.com/Bitcoin/Bitcoin Core, and you can look at the code for yourself. And you can check it out, you can run it, you can see what it does, make sure that there's no bugs in it. And then the other sort of part of that word is virtual. So you cannot, you cannot hold a Bitcoin in your hand, right? It's completely virtual. There's no physical, sort of tangible Bitcoin as opposed to like, a tangible mouse or whatever it may be. So it's completely virtual. It's completely, a new way of thinking about money, which is super exciting. Yeah, so when I was at Fidelity, so I should maybe explain this a little bit more. So what I was doing at Fidelity is kind of the complete opposite of what I'm doing now at Avanti. So when I was at Fidelity, because Fidelity is such a large company, I was much more on like the research side of the house. So I was basically playing with Bitcoin daily, seeing what cool products I could make and what cool, open source projects I could do. And I was kind of able to, be my own boss in some way. And this was also a really good experience to be self-managed. And then when I came to Avanti, so Avanti is a startup, so I'm much more on the production side of the house. So I actually have like real tasks to do daily. But as of this very moment, basically what I'm doing is I'm taking information off of the blockchain, which is completely public, and basically putting it into databases for Avanti to use later for various reasons.
Wonderful. Thank you for that explanation. I love getting the like low level but also high level picture of Bitcoin. Yes. Because it's such a new tech.
Yes, I mean there's many levels, and I don't know how far I could go down. So I think that's a good way to cap it for now.
Yes, wonderful. One last question, and then we should probably wrap up this session to keep it at about the right time.
Okay.
But final question, drum roll. What was the most influential teacher or learning experience you've ever had throughout your like middle school and high school or college experience? What can students look for in a teacher, in a mentor? And what advice do you have for students to go into this career? That was a giant question, but
Ooh, okay.
try your best.
So I actually have a really good one. So as many, sort of STEM people may feel, there's a thing called imposter syndrome, right? Which is you always, see yourself as sort of this imposter. It's, someone that doesn't belong, right? And that's a very common thing throughout the STEM field. Like many other people, I also experienced that at times. So when I was in London earlier this year to go to a conference, yeah, I know, traveling before the pandemic, of course, I met basically one of the I mean, as I consider him, one of the top Bitcoin people in the world. I mean, this guy, I won't mention his name, but he is, the Stephen Hawking of Bitcoin, in my opinion. And I was just chatting with him at this conference, and I was kind of, we kind of were talking about technical stuff. I didn't really understand what he was saying. And then we sort of got to, the personal life, and I said, I'll call him John for just for the sake of conversation, but I said, John, I feel like I don't belong, blah, blah, blah. I always feel like there's better programmers than me. And he basically went through like a 20-minute rant about how even he feels that way. I mean, the Stephen Hawking of Bitcoin talking about how he thinks that he's not good. And I think it just sort of puts me into perspective where it's like, you are a lot better than what you think you are. And once again, this is sort of something that comes with age, of course, but I think just don't be, I guess to sum it up, just don't be too hard on yourself, right? You are a good programmer no matter what level you are, right? There's a lot of people in this world who can't even, turn on a computer, let alone write a basic, Python or Scratch or C program. So, don't be hard on yourself, give yourself some time to grow, and you'll eventually, hopefully get to the point where you don't feel like you are an imposter anymore. Yeah,
Thank
maybe
you, Spencer. That's such helpful advice.
There. Yeah, it's all about wholesomeness. You are your own best friend, basically. So be nice to, try your how do I say it? Try your best not to be too hard on yourself. There we go.
Thank you so much, Spencer. That's such helpful advice. Remember, students, at whatever level you're at, you are valued. You don't have to feel like an imposter. Lewis had one last question, so I lied earlier. What other jobs are available in the field of financial tech? Is it all math or computer science based? My bad.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of other jobs, of course. I mean, honestly, Bitcoin and blockchain is a very, very small percentage of the fintech field. So, you can work for any bank or financial institution, whether it be TD Bank, Deutsche Bank, whatever it may be. It doesn't even have to be a Fortune 500 company. But there's still the need for front end, back end, full stack engineers. So just because I'm sort of parading Bitcoin does not mean that is the only job available. And it's also, CS is one of those fields that allows you to blend in so many other disciplines as well. So, you could be interested in, I don't know, psychology and still include computer science as well. And then there's also even like data. So there's like data analysis, data cleaning, machine learning, big data, data science and everything. So it's really whatever you're interested in. There's probably a need for it at some company, at least one. And then is it all math and computer science based? Short answer, no. A lot of modern programming languages do make it pretty easy to write code without necessarily any high-level knowledge of math. If you get more into like the data science and machine learning stuff, then you may need to incorporate some higher-level math, which you can still be taught to. But yeah, I mean, general programming, I would say, does not need math. It's more just sort of the quantitative reasoning way of solving problems.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you on today.
My pleasure.
And I will make sure that any students that have questions will get forwarded your way. Thank you so much to our guest, Spencer Hommel. Thank you for all of you guys who watch. And just remember, you are valued. Don't feel like an imposter is the main thing I took out of today, among many other things.
This one's cool.
Thank you so much, Spencer.